So an entire year after buying the fabric for this project, I finally finished the dress. I wanted it for last summer, summer that never was, but the summer dress mania really stuck around for me, and now I actually have something tangible that's actually seasonally appropriate for once. The original plan last year was to buy a sewing pattern. I was going to make the dress with princess seams, like a draped neckline, but I had my heart set on using like this particular fabric, and I just thought like it might look a bit too much just because the fabric is so busy. The main issue was that I couldn't find a vintage pattern with my proper measurements that had all the design details that I wanted as well, and just the thought of having to adjust a princess seam dress and then having to adjust all the finicky little like design details that have to like match up properly, it just made me want to scream. So I ended up drafting something. So the bodice was based on a 1940s bodice block draft, and the front's one piece with a V-neck cut out. In the back it's two pieces with an overlap for the closures. The skirt's just a full circle skirt with two seams. Just a full circle skirt with two seams. One in the front and one in the back. I wanted the skirt to open at the back in the same place as the bodice, so that's where I got the zip. But I've seen a lot of vintage dresses with a short zip at the side, just to open the waist, but I felt that because the bodice opens all the way down the back, instead of only just enough to get your shoulders through, like I just made more sense to me to have all the closures in the same place. I just wanted to spare myself a headache, I think. Once I'd made a muslin of the bodice and was fairly happy with it, I cut the bodice pieces out of the fashion fabric, making sure I remembered to add the overlap. I wanted to add a lining, so cut the same pattern pieces from a plain cream cotton. I wanted the seams of the bodice interior to be hidden easily and for the bodice to have a bit of additional structure. I didn't do the same for the skirt. I wanted it to have a lot more movement, and a cotton lining seemed like it would have weighed it down. I sewed the darts and the seams of the dress fabric and treated my lining the same way. It worked well enough for what I wanted the lining for, but next time I'd like to try flatlining the pieces. I think it would have made more sense to make the darts by treating the dress and the lining fabric as if they were one piece. Once attached, I turned the bodice the right way round to hide the seams, though I initially forgot to snip the point of my collar and had to straighten it out later. I didn't mind the ruched look, but it was wrong and I couldn't leave it. I made sure all the edges had been turned properly and top-stitched the armholes to neaten the edges a bit. The skirt was simple enough. Its two halves of a circle seamed together as two panels. The waist is cut to my direct measurement and the hem flares out into a full circle. There's enough fabric to fall into natural pleats without my having to add them. I attached the skirt to the bodice and concealed the seams with the bodice lining. I inserted a zip at the centre back waist. It's impossible to get into it otherwise, it's just cut too close at the waist. I closed the bodice with poppers concealed by the overlap and added false covered buttons. The overlap wasn't quite wide enough for proper buttonholes, so I resorted to fake buttons and poppers. To finish, the skirt was hemmed with bias tape sewn down by machine and then hand hemmed to the dress with a cross stitch. I wanted the stitching to be as subtle as possible on the right side of the fabric, so I didn't mind hand hemming. I've cracked on with this dress to get it ready for a summer party, which I thought would be quite fitting. It's heavily inspired by Scarlett's barbecue dress from Gone with the Wind. Ideally, of course, I'd have a big straw hat, a green cummerbund and some white gloves. I really would go there, the whole 9 yards. I'm actually trying to make some little white gloves for myself in time to wear with the dress. If I do manage it, the evidence should be here within the week.